This is Nina Lockwood. Welcome to Get Your Happy Back. Stories and insights that will inspire you to find new sources of happiness in your own life. Hello and welcome to Get Your Happy Back. Today, another special guest, Wai Chan. Hello, Wai.
Hi.
Wai has a really powerful story about coming back from, I don't even know what you call it, challenges. Let's put it that way. So, Wai, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and then share with us what you've gone through and how you managed to get out on the other side, getting your happy back in the process.
Amazing. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on this
My pleasure.
podcast. I'm really grateful to be able to say yes to it. I think that's part of the challenge is that if you asked me to do this 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do it. In terms of my story, I like to focus really in the last 5 years, because that's really the core of the challenges. The
Mm,
challenges clearly started well before that, and some of those challenges are going to continue. But the last 5 years have been quite a journey for me. So I'm now 55, and when I was 50, so 5 years ago, I found myself fired from a job that I just absolutely loved. And so that was all right. I'm usually a very resilient person. I can get up from whatever. However, my husband was also fired from his job that he was really good at just 2 weeks before that. And for me, the story of being fired, so what? You're 50 and you're fired. People get fired. And it was my first time being fired. But that's not the part that really hurt me. Um, I got fired on the day that I was supposed to meet with my supervisors, my leaders, to talk about a request that I had put in about accommodation for my health. So at 50, I found myself really struggling through the typical thing that a lot of women go through, which is perimenopause. And at this point, I had gone through quite a few different treatments from the gynecologist as well as the blood specialist. I had already been getting some treatment to stop bleeding, and I was also had gone through quite a few IV infusions to bring up my iron because I was quite anemic.
mm,
And it got to a point where it was just really hard focusing at work and getting myself to work. And I was also facing a lot of appointments to a lot of different specialists, lots of different kinds of tests. So I thought, with the help of my doctor, to get permission to work 4 days a week. And I thought, well, as a manager, as a leader, I've certainly approved and worked with HR on these things. I know that I can ask for that, and I was feeling pretty hopeful. But then I walked into a meeting, and I got walked out of a place that I really felt like it was a second home, and I really felt like I was making a huge difference. And that was still okay. I had I went on a cab ride home and had a really nice conversation with a cab driver who was very kind. So like, it wasn't terrible. It was terrible, but it wasn't terrible because part of me is that I've always believed in my abilities. And I had a career where I had proven myself over and over again that I can make moves, and I can move laterally, I can move up. And I've always brought my own fun to work. Um,
You
and
were in the
so,
healthcare, excuse me for interrupting. You were in the healthcare,
yeah,
right? Healthcare
yeah. So at that
administration?
point, Yeah, so at that point, it would have been sort of 30 years in healthcare. I started out as a physiotherapist, as a clinician, and then I was like, oh, this is really great, but I also want to change the system from the inside. Went and got my MBA, and became a physiotherapist leader, and also a teacher. And then from there, moved into hospital administration, and then moved into research administration. And one thing that I found, was consistent in my career is that I know myself to be a servant leader. So I was always of service, whether it was my patients or whether it was the leaders that I was positioning and working with, right? So the heart base is also what helped me with what was going to happen the following 5 years, because that I could go into my heart, I could go into the truth of who I am, to now, instead of helping other people and helping these leaders become amazing, successful leaders in the healthcare system, I could apply that lens towards myself. And really, to be honest, that was a missing ingredient, is that I have always been, very good at taking care of other people, taking care of my children. I'm also a mother of three. And it got to a point where really, honestly, my body just couldn't sustain the level of pushing through that we're also familiar with, right?
Such a
And
common circumstance of being taking care of everybody else and leaving yourself out. And then your body finally says, I think you've had enough.
yes, yes, absolutely. My body had enough. And so then that was of October 2019. Right away, I'm like, okay, great. This is time for me to do something for myself. So I set up a coaching and consulting practice right away. And it was just sort of one of those blessings, but also a curse, where
Mhm.
I walk in asking my workplace to give me one day to deal with my health, and instead I got all the time I needed, right? So the whole phrase of be careful what you wish for was right there. Um, I wasn't able to work full time in my coaching and consulting practice right away, but I was building towards that, and still getting the care that I needed from the gynecologist and the hematologist, right? And then, as you know, the world shut down, COVID hit, and like many people, I too got COVID. And that really took me for a really deep dive into, I thought I was sick, and then I got really sick, right? Um, I struggled with anxiety and depression like many people before, until I hit a really severe clinical depressive episode,
Mm.
right? So coming out of that, and then dealing with COVID, and I just never recovered. It took me a long time. I would say it's really been more the last 6 months that I'm really feeling like I have I recognize myself more than just the shell that I became, right? And what I am working through now is a possibility that I may have been dealing with not just a clinical depression, because that I got through that fairly quickly. I got medicated. I was going to get my care, join different support groups.
Mhm.
Um, but then I just could never feel well. I do something and then I would just feel fluish. Like I would get the flu. I felt like I was getting COVID and the flu almost on a weekly basis,
Oh my word.
right? And what did that look like? It looked like I wasn't able to get out of bed. It looked like I was just in a lot of pain. I would wake up and I feel like my muscles and the fascia, the stuff that's around the muscles, I felt like I was waking up in fascia that was like two sizes too small for me. So I couldn't really move without stiffness, without pain, right? And then I just ran into a ton of gut issues.
Oh
You
my
you
word.
go through that workout, the next thing you know, I have bladder issues, and then you're like, oh, you get followed up with bladder stuff, and oh, now you need to go see a kidney doctor.
Oh
So it was just
no.
a lot of things, Nina, a lot of things, one after another, and you're sitting there going, what the F, right? What is going on? And it's very scary, because then you also get worked up for some really scary diagnosis, right? I went through a whole neurological type of workout, because I would get dizzy. I would just trip on my own feet. I know we all do that, but to actually trip on your own feet on a regular basis and then kind of hurting your joints because you tripped, was a new thing for me,
Mm.
right? And from a life perspective, what was difficult about that is that it meant that I just couldn't get out as much as I wanted to, right? I got a lot of my happy before I got really sick. I get a lot of my happy through just getting outside and sitting in a park, going on hikes. If I can't do hikes, little nature walks, right? But there's something magical about being in a forest. And And I always felt safe doing that until I'm like going into the forest and I feel like I am tripping on a trail that I have been on a gazillion times, right? Or feeling like I'm just so dizzy that I am going to not be able to drive myself back home. So that was really scary. Good news, all the neurological stuff, all of the big diagnoses have been cleared, and
Mhm.
now I'm being worked up for what they are now calling myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is also known as chronic fatigue
Mm-hmm.
and or long COVID on that.
Oh my.
And the reason I'm really feeling very fortunate to be able to talk to you about this is because we know that a lot of people are having a hard time recovering from COVID. Now, it doesn't have to be as severe as the people who are in the ICU who are now needing oxygen to breathe, but something in our bodies, for some of us, got triggered. And I now have an extremely reactive immune system. And I've learned a lot. And I want to be able to talk about my story for my own healing, but also to see and just trigger maybe someone else's thought process to be able to have a little bit of insight and maybe be motivated to get to know their body a little bit more so that way they can actually do better, because I had to do better to listen to my body and I had to do better to give my body what it needed. And now I'm on the other side of it. I'm able to hike. Very happy to say I'm able to do a 2 kilometer hike completely on my own. It takes me out, but I'm able to do it. I'm able to say yes to conversations like these. And I am increasing my practice hours for my coaching and my consulting. I am selective, but I am able to say yes to that. I feel like I've established a good baseline around what my body needs. And when I say body, I mean body and mind,
The whole
right?
shebang.
Whole shebang. Yeah, and it's all good.
I want to touch on a couple things that you mentioned. One is that right now, menopause is a really growing topic
Mhm,
in the professional world because of how it affects women in the workplace and their productivity and their motivation, all of that. So
mhm,
I think that's really important in the whole picture that you're describing here. And the second question I was not really the second question, but the question I have now is what kept you going? What what kept you focused on I will do whatever I can in order to
mhm.
feel good, feel happy, and know that all is well, whatever the
Yeah,
consequences were.
yeah. That's a really powerful question. And I think that what really helps to always is to always go back to the basics and really understanding, how did I get here? How do I usually get through anything? And to just really get to know myself and then dive in a little bit more into some of my own internalized oppressions, right? So, and what do I mean by that? I mean that I lived a really healthy life before, active. I ate well because I had gestational diabetes with my first pregnancy and all subsequent pregnancies. So I learned to eat well and to manage diabetes through diet and lifestyle changes. So I've always felt quite empowered. I had a good balance of, risk taking and exploring, right? So I came into all of this with that background. And I also am very lucky in the sense that I never lost my sense of awe. Like, we're all born with that, that sense of, there's just magic I don't I think some of your listeners might not like the word magic, but call it whatever you want to call it. But there's that connection, that just wow, wow about the world, wow about how the human body is. So I always had that sense, and I was always a meditator. right? And you and I met through the Sedona method. So the whole idea of working through the emotional freedom, so that way I'm not, enslaved with my own sort of self identification with things that are really not for me to work on or to fix, right?
Mhm.
And none of that was hitting me. None of that was working because really at the end of the day, the way I explain it to myself now and to other people is understanding that I've always had a very rich inner world that was very easy to empower. But then I had a very oppressive outer world where the world was giving me very mixed messages, like even with my menopausal symptoms, to be gaslit about what I was experiencing,
Mm.
right? Or, career-wise, if you're in healthcare in Canada, you'll see a ton of people on the front line who look like me, who do the work every single day. But then if you look at the top of the organization, you'll find maybe 3 or 4 people at that level. So the whole representation, that the systemic oppression is a real thing as well. And
Mhm.
then, everything else around, the messages that we get socially around what it takes to be a mother, what it takes to be a wife, right? And there was just sort of like this massive tension of inside, very full, very like free, loving, creative. And then outside is like limitations, limitations. Nope, not for you. Not that. Right. And what's in between my inner world and my outer world is my body.
Yeah.
Like I cannot be surprised that my body basically just kind of put up the 2 middle fingers and said, you need to slow down and you really need to work out this tension between your inner world and your outer world. And really, that's what I've been doing and just dismantling a lot of the things that I took from the outer world and just somehow managed to put it on my body. And they became these beliefs that just really were very limiting and going to see specialists who some of them were terrible or terribly gaslighting, but listening to my inner world and saying you just need to find the people who are going to who are balanced and that are able to and willing to help you, right? And
That's
so
so
I felt
important.
so important. So my thing is when you go see someone and they're gaslighting you, give them a chance if you're an over accommodator like me, but really find yourself someone else, right? And just get out of there and do the environmental assessment of what is around me that is giving me messages that I am not deserving to be well, I'm not deserving to be healthy, right? That yes, millions of women go through perimenopause, but not everybody has to suffer,
Right. I
right?
think what
And
you're saying, let me just jump in here
yeah,
because I'm really hoping that listeners are hearing what you're saying because one of the things that I hear you talking about is your inner resilience. And when many women are hit with a challenge or multiple challenges, they forget that. They forget that they have that. And all of you're talking about how we have certain expectations put upon us. Every woman can relate to that as a mother, as a professional, as a spouse, as a friend. There are all these expectations that keep us from seeing the possibilities, seeing awe and wonder to take us out of the darkness that we start to feel when we have been burdened by so many of these expectations. So I wanted to highlight that. And I also wanted to say that we're talking about a rich inner world, is that, again, I think that the more women could take a look at that in themselves because their innate creativity, their innate wisdom, their innate potential, when we're under pressure, we often forget that that's there for us. So I wanted to highlight that because so much of what you're saying is so rich and resonates so much with me and the women that I've worked with. So keep going.
yeah, thank you. This is the thing. I knew that you'd be able to summarize and take all my blah. and make sense of it. um, so I want to take us a little bit deeper, and you use the word inner resilience, right? And what does that mean? Because I think that sometimes words kind of get lost, right? And you know what really made a difference for me is because I had always come across, and I always considered myself to be resilient, and I had that inner resilience. But then what? Like the inner resilience didn't get me out of bed when I couldn't get out of bed,
Mhm.
right? You know, the inner resilience didn't get me into the shower, you know? But that inner resilience didn't go anywhere. But what happened, and where I've landed for me is I would love for us to start talking about self-respect
Mhm.
and self-love, right? Because the resilience is there, but then we have to do something else to show ourselves that self-respect. I mean, before that, I didn't have any problems. It didn't matter if I had the flu, you take something, you put on the computer, you go to work, right? You take care of the kids. Like, that is how I understood resilience. But then to turn that around to myself and to understand that in those days where I really just struggled. It's like self-respect look like accepting that. So,
Mhm.
self-respect, self-acceptance. But again, like we hear radical acceptance a lot, right? But what does that look like?
Mhm.
And for me, because of the brain that I have, I kind of had to turn that around to self-respect. And part of it is because my upbringing is a lot about respecting others, right? Connecting with others. Well, I had to take all of that and turn it into myself. So some days when I am struggling, self-respect is just lying there and doing ankle foot exercises, doing shoulder mobility exercises, just sitting there and just recognizing that I just need to take deep breaths,
Mm. That's
right?
so
And
important for, I'm so glad you're putting that into this conversation. So many women are hard on themselves when their bodies start to give them a few challenges, right? Like, I should be up and doing this, and what's wrong with me? And this shouldn't be happening, and all the resistance that happens when we come across something unexpected that we can't do a lot about. We can take, you know, baby steps and sometimes bigger steps, but it's a process to get back to that full body wholeness, if you will.
yeah. Well, what that resilience hardens, right? Hardens you.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's everywhere. How do you parent for resilient children? How do you, build resilience? And I'm not saying that's a wrong move. I'm just saying that there's a flip side to everything that we're trying to do.
Hmm.
Right. And so the flip side of that is, what does resilience actually mean? And when does resilience become, that hardening, that
Hmm.
resistance? Because it can be a form of resistance if
Yeah.
you don't check it, if I don't check it,
Yeah.
right?
So then we go back to, which seems like happens in almost every single one of these conversations, is going back to self-awareness, to noticing and having the presence of mind to
Mm-hmm.
be able to really say, okay, let's take a stop here. What is it that I really need? So it's so interesting that you include self-love and self-care as the flip side of resilience. Maybe it's not the flip side, but it's an aspect for ourselves if we're going through challenges to be able to not judge ourselves, not think we should be doing something else because this is where we are in the moment. And now what?
Exactly. Now what? But we don't do now what? We do a lot of shoulds, right? I think that a lot of people, it's gender heavy, but even, it covers everybody. The propensity to go into shooting myself, right? And then very quickly from there going into that really self-toxicity of shame, of guilt, right? And then now, I mean, what are we telling our body? What are we telling our brain? What are we trying to do? And we can't heal from a place where we're constantly just telling ourselves negative things. We've got to use, I mean, we know so much more now about neuroplasticity and we know so much more about even things at the cellular level. Let's start using that, right? So noticing that negative things that we bring into our own inner world now, right? And to just notice it. And I think that that's all we need to do as a starting point, is to just notice when I should myself. Oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I shouldn't be laying in bed. Oh, that's lazy, right? And that's just not self-love. That's just not self-care, right? And in that point, like, what are you doing? Like, what kind of hormones are you telling your body to release, right? Are you really using, are you optimizing, your body's ability to heal itself, to calm itself down? Or are you telling it, when you're telling it, you should this, you should that, you're really just telling it to stress itself out. And
Mhm.
so, what hormones are you releasing? And in perimenopause, our threshold for the stress hormones is very low, very low. And I just wish that we were kinder to ourselves and also kinder with each other,
Mhm.
and just being able to hold that space for each other, that it's a it's a wonderful milestone to get to my second half of life. It is absolutely a privilege, but not if you look at society right now, right? We get very mixed messages. It's very negative, right? From, just perimenopause being an actual health issue for women going through it. You mentioned about, it affects our work, it affects our relationships. And more importantly, it affects our body. I mean, if our hormones start changing, like, are we really surprised that, depression comes in a little bit harder and stronger, anxiety, right? Weight gain, a lot of women, it seems like right now there's just so much focus about weight gain with menopause, but there's also all these other things that we don't talk about. Joint pain. There's an orthopedic surgeon that talks about perimenopause and joint pain being a real thing, right? Gut issues, like, my goodness, when I was going through my thing, like, a lot of the technicians and the gut doctors would be like, oh, well, there's also this thing. We don't know. It could be just your perimenopause.
By
But
the
then I go
way,
see my menopause specialist, and she's like, look at me straight in the eyes and tells me that the gut and the pain that I'm experiencing has nothing to do with perimenopause, right? And 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 that's okay. We know that a gynecologist's job is to deal with the uterus and the ovaries, not what's above it, not the joints around it, right? It's just that. So then the self-respect that I had to show myself is to not be allowed to be gaslit about my very real experience,
Mhm.
right? And it's easy though, right? You know lots of women who then become victim of the medical system. And then if the medical system fails us, we go into, the healing world. And we know that in the healing world, some of it is really good and some of it is not so good, right? So then we get stuck, there. And then we try so many different things. But one thing that I want all of us to try is to just be where we're at and just be with whatever is happening to our body and just really listen to what our body needs.
Mm. This is something we all need to be reminded of over and over and over again, because some of us, until we know better, treat our bodies like a car, and we forget to check the tires, make sure we get the oil changed, all the checkups that we need, because we know that that's going to take us somewhere. And we forget that about our bodies. It's bodies are just this thing we put food in and enjoy certain things, but really it's our minds and where we think we're going that consumes a lot of women. So I love what you're saying is that recognizing that if we know something to be true for ourselves, that we cannot let ourselves be gaslit by people who don't see it and they don't recognize it.
Right.
And not to take them at face value, take them at face value.
Yeah. And because I come from the science world, I do want to make a plug around science. Science has its benefits, but how science is interpreted can also be quite detrimental, right? So, like some of the specialists that I have seen, they're highly trained individuals in their very specific body system, right? But we live in that body and we are the ones who connect, right? And so we can go back to what science says to us about, we can all stand to learn about how the gut works. I mean, so Nina, the number of women who do not understand what healthy pooping is just shocks me. I don't know, maybe it's because I have three boys and so I've lived with four men, but it is surprising to me, including myself, right? Because until I ran into gut issues, I absolutely took that for granted. Simple things like aside from gut, like simple things like our body needs is movement, right? So, and I'm not talking about, going out there and it has to be this or it has to be that. Simple movement, simple as putting on music and dancing to it,
Mhm.
right? Breathing, right? Like we can all take time to just kind of go back to grade 5 biology and kind of go, what is this thing, that are, the set of organs that are in my lungs? How can I, what is an optimal breath? What is an optimal heart rate? I mean, people, because I know this world well, I've been in it around anxiety. Like we have so much that we can do there around just noticing how our heart beats. And that often is a very initial signal that we are anxious or having feelings of anxiety, right? So that just kind of going back to our heart rate and our breath and just using that, right? Engaging our parasympathetic system. I know I'm making it sound easy peasy, but it really is that simple. We have to first start with ourselves. Like, what is my body asking me to do? My body's asking me to move. My body's asking me to rest. Wait a second. Let me just double check. Where is that thought coming from? Is it coming from fear that if I move, I'm going to pass out? Whoa, check, double check again. And be willing to do the experiment. So maybe moving if I move, I'm gonna fall on my face, might be a thought that comes to mind. But until you test it, you don't know whether that's gonna be true or false. And until you test it, your brain is just gonna believe you that when you get up, you're gonna fall. Right. So, and we have science that proves this, that you can actually change your neuropsychophysiology by just rewiring what you tell yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the fear is not real. The fear is real, but we just have to kind of take a beat and just kind of go, wait a second, where is that coming from?
I
Right.
love that. Again, it goes back to self-awareness. So, are these things that you're sharing with us what you were able to do to get your happy back, so to speak?
Oh, Nina, I basically like I am such a happy addict that I'll do anything, right? Like, because part of it is that again, it's the childhood that I had with the beautiful sunset in East Africa and just the ocean and just the collectivity of the community that I grew up in where everybody belongs. So I'm really anchored in that, right? So for me, it's a lot of different things, and I have tried a lot of different things. And yes, these are things that absolutely is what I count on now is just double checking. I want to go for a hike and a thought comes up. I double check what that thought is, and I just have to notice it, right? And this is some of the stuff that we talk about in the Sedona method, right? Around just awareness training, but just checking in, right? And not believing the first thought. And again, neuroscience has shown us that our feelings are automatic, our thoughts are automatic. So why don't we replace them with new automatic thoughts and new automatic feelings, right? And that's the training. So I've been training myself with that. Just checking in, but also basic self-care. What do I need? Showers for me are really important. They're not important for everybody else, but it's what I need to get my joints going in the morning. I'm in there with warm water, doing my shoulder exercises, my hip exercises, right? Because without it, I'm just really stiff, right? And a lot of people with arthritis will recognize themselves with that, right? I eat well, so I spend a lot of time food prepping only because I am still figuring out what my gut can tolerate.
Mhm.
And I can tolerate more now because I've reintroduced a lot of different foods. But what I went through is called a FODMAP
Oh, yes.
elimination diet,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, that's so hard. It means that you can have it means that for a little while you get rid of all FODMAPs and then you introduce them back in. It's not a lifetime thing. But then the lifetime thing is knowing what you don't tolerate. And
Mm.
just because you don't tolerate it, it doesn't mean that you don't have it. At least for me, it does not mean that because I love food, it doesn't mean I don't have it. It's just that I am consciously making the choice to have it and I plan my day around it. So yesterday I had a lovely dim sum with an advisory group that I'm volunteering with. And there's lots of foods there that are really not great for my gut. But then had it in moderation, came home and took care of my body, right? And movement is important. So some days all I can get is, I'm not kidding you, 10 minutes of movement at home. I don't get outside. And some days that I'm low, but I can get outside, you might find me fully covered because part of this thing that my body is doing now is that I'm overreactive to a lot of things.
Mm.
And weird thing, like I go out and it's windy. Sometimes that means that I come back and I have hives and I'm itchy for 2 hours, like bumps on my skin. It's just sort of like, what is this? So I go out covered, sunglasses on, earplugs in, so that way my nervous system is not continually being overstimulated because it's in a reactive phase, right? And I always carry an EpiPen because the thing about sensitivities like that, allergies like that, is that they can be a little bit dangerous. So now I go out with an EpiPen.
You're prepared.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
I really love what you've been sharing with us. It's such a good reminder on many levels that wisdom and happiness have so much to do with noticing, self-awareness, self-love, self-respect, and really taking back, if you want to put it that way, our sense of who we are, not from what people have gaslighted us as or gaslit us, not people that have put these expectations on us, which is all of society, basically, religion, culture, politics, everything, and really taken back who we are or letting that come out of us by saying, no, I'm not going to buy into that belief. I'm not going to buy into that one. That's not, it doesn't work for me. That limits me, that restricts me rather than expands my sense of who I am and what's possible for me. Yeah,
right.
really. I really am hoping, fingers crossed and all, that those of us who are listening to this call really take away so many of the gems that you're sharing. And I want to thank you for that. So before we
Well,
go,
thank you.
you're very welcome. I'm so glad we had this conversation. Before we go, I would love it if you could share with people how to find you.
Oh, I would love to connect with anyone and everyone. Any questions for sure. And it's not a sales pitch or anything like that. Great, I'm setting up, I'm a coach and all of that. And I've got, aside of that, I'm really quite available because my truth and my purpose is just understanding that we're all here to walk each other home.
Hmm.
Okay. We
Love
really
that
are. I
quote.
think that's, yeah, we really are. We're just here to walk each other home. So to have a conversation with me, people can send me an email. I do have a website. I think that's the easiest thing. And I'll spell out, it's my first name .com. So my full name, sorry. So it's spelled WAIHINCHAN.com. So
We'll
my
have that in the
full
liner notes.
yeah, my full name is Wai Hin Chan, but I shorten it to Wai. And that's that.
And you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or both?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook with my name.
I'll put that in
But
the
I'm
notes.
also and LinkedIn, same thing, my name. But if people go to my website, they'll get links to my LinkedIn, my Facebook, and also Instagram. On Instagram, I am the only Wai. So the underscore
That's
only
great.
underscore Wai, WAI. And if people are interested in just seeing, some of the foods that I've been cooking or some of the crafts that I've been making around just finding happy. Talk about, I just
Mm.
love creating. My Instagram is fully public and they can see stuff there.
And get lots of inspiration. I'm always inspired by seeing the photos of food that you've been making or the crafts that you've been making. And there again, there's another example of how you get your happy back as you express that life force that wants to come through you.
Yeah. And I just want to end with something that I saw that made so much sense for me. It was a meme that I saw on the internet, and it was a grandmother and a granddaughter. And the granddaughter asked the grandmother, how do we deal with pain? And in this meme, the grandmother is knitting because I'm a knitter and crocheter, right? And she's knitting and she says, "Oh, love, we use our hands."
Ooh,
Right.
yummy.
And with the art in the back, you know exactly what that means, right? I'm in pain. How do I deal with it? I use my hands.
Mhm. Oh, beautiful. What a treat to have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
And
for those,
thanks to everybody who's listening.
was just going to say it, you said it for me. So thank you so much again. And for those of you who are watching or listening, stay tuned for the next episode. Bye for now.